Um, Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Edith Duru, and I'll be your moderator for today's session, which is the last session for Inspire Her series. It's really been an amazing 3 weeks of learning from experts, from those that they've been able to lead us through various experiences that they've had, how they've been able to achieve growth in their various sector. And I must say it's been a really great learning curve. um, all right, and today happens to be our last session for the Inspire Her series, and our our keynote speaker is already here. I'm sure everybody is really, really excited to meet you. We've looked through your profile, and it's really, really amazing. All right, so I would quickly introduce our speaker, Ibuku. Hello, Madam Ibuku, are you here? Hello, ma.
Yes, I am. I can
Okay,
hear
yeah.
you.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So we'd like to meet you. I'm very sure our community, everyone is really, really excited to meet you. So could you kindly introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, and you know how it has been with your career growth and all.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. First of all, let me express my thanks to Tower Africa team um, and everybody who has, been working behind the scenes to ensure that I'm here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You already know my name. I would say you want to know more about me. How do I start? Okay, I would say I'm a woman who has not allowed society from stopping her from being who she is today, right? I often say that I often use that to introduce myself almost everywhere I go, particularly because if for someone like me, I've started with very humble beginnings, humble background, and with each step that I take, I see a level of exposure, a level of elevation that I first of all believe that God has a hand in, and has lifted me so much. So I would say I'm a woman who has not allowed society to stop her from being who she is. From a very tender age, I've always had a very, insatiable level of curiosity. I've always been very into people. I think I've always had great interpersonal skills. I'm always had a way of connecting with people. And I take that into the work that I do. I'm very, very passionate about gender. Initially, it started from gender equality, but now it's more or less a a balanced way of looking at complex solutions and solving it, particularly in the gender space, which has intersection with different aspects of life, right? And yeah, I would say that has helped me in my career. I've gone far. I've done some really great things. Still looking to do some really, really massive and significant things in my life. And yeah, I'm grateful for where I am right now. So maybe that's just a preamble, but I hope that that's a good starting point for everybody listening.
All right, thank you very much, Ibuku. That's really, really impressive. Telling us about your journey. Um, yeah. So I think what wanted to ask is just for you to share with us, with the community, what has been inspired you. I saw from your profile that you have about 15 years of experience advocating for gender equality, right? So we are really interested to know what has inspired you, what made you to decide to do all of this, right?
Sorry, I could
Sorry.
barely hear you. You're a bit muffled.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
All right. Yeah. So I was saying that it's really nice to hear you talk about your journey and all, especially as regards to gender equality. Right. You mentioned you started from gender age, pursuing your career path and all. So we really want to know what has inspired you, to pursue the advocacy for gender equality. What has been the driving force and has enabled you all these years in becoming successful in this area?
Thank you very much, Edith. So I would say my career wasn't always linear. It wasn't always straightforward per se, right? I think when I left school, so I had studied linguistics and modern European languages reluctantly because it wasn't what I wanted to do. I'd always wanted to do law, but somehow that didn't work out. And even when I tried to find other ways to do it, it just didn't work out. So I had done linguistics and modern European languages from University of Ilorin, gotten out of school, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do because I didn't understand what we could do with linguistics and modern European language. So, but I knew I wanted to get a job. I didn't know what job I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want banking. I just was very clear that I didn't want banking because my sister had been a banker and I'd seen quite a number of things that she had done, and I was just like, okay, this is not for me. So along the line, I had started first of all as a PA to a very renowned personality in Lagos, and then got into customer service and all. Somehow I ended up in banking reluctantly again. It wasn't something I planned for, but I ended up in banking again. And since I just got into banking, I was like, okay, you might as well just stay here because you tried as much as possible to avoid it, but now you're here. So why not just put in the work. And I've always been someone who is very, very hardworking. In fact, they used to tell me initially when people see me, they be just like, okay, she's just a pretty face and a small girl and everything. But the news later was like, she's very good at what she does. In fact, some people would say she works like a man. At the time, it really didn't, you know, I didn't really. For me, it was just like if they say you work like a man, it was something like I took as a compliment, but I think there was more to it like that sin at that time. And steadily, I worked so much. Banking those days was not banking as it is now, so it was pretty tedious. Somehow, I got into the senior management program of the bank. My work ethics were really stellar, and got me into the top 100. And then from the top 100, we were shortlisted into the top, was it 11 or 10? I can't remember, but thereabout. We were shortlisted to the top 11 and then got into the senior management program. And I think it was at that time that I kind of understood exactly where my career trajectory was going. So at that time, after I finished the senior management program, I was assigned to propositions and project teams, no, propositions and product teams in the bank, and somehow the women banking role fell into my hands. Um, Initially, there was somebody who was heading the team in that department, but she got moved out of the team, and I was the most senior woman, so it just automatically I just took it over, and I think that was where my career trajectory really changed. At the time, I really didn't want it to. I think everything was somewhat reluctantly because I was like, I had never really considered that. I never really considered maybe that there were. I mean, that I'd faced some level of um, discrimination and gender equality along my way, right? But it wasn't something I took to heart. I was just like, over time, you get to know who I am, and you will change your mind about me. But as I started women banking, I started to discover so much as I was learning about the disparities in terms of women having bank accounts, what it took for them to access loans and everything. I think my eyes just popped and I was like, why should anyone be going through this? And it kind of made me, reflect back on some of the things that I had gone through in my own time. And I was able to put things in perspective like, these are things that are not right. We can't just be our voices can't just be limited because we are women. And so it was at that time I started to push for more in terms of financial education for myself, financial education for women. I started to see a lot of segregation in terms of what women were going through in terms of their finance. I started to see a lot of segregation and bias in terms of how women were even shortlisted for opportunities and all. And I think my my whole life just took a leap from there. And so at that time, I was also pregnant with my second child. So I went to have my second baby, and by the time I came back to the bank, I just went into the women propositions full throttle. That this is what I had to do in the bank and all. And I never knew it was going to lead me to a path where I would be a gender specialist, as well as a gender consultant today. Because in my head, I was just, like I said, I've always been a very hardworking and smart worker at the same time. So I was just doing the work for the bank. I had no clue that it was going to take me down this line. And by the time I left banking and I started to think of what was I going to do next, I knew it had to do with women. I knew it had to do with gender, but I wasn't. It wasn't like the path was so clear. But the one thing about life and with career is everything makes sense at the end. As you continue to do things, it all comes together. And so when I left banking, the only thing I'd known basically was women banking, right? And I thought maybe I was going to be doing women banking again. But because also I'm a woman of faith, I had heard clearly from God that you're going to register a business, you're going to think of a very good name that I have to approve, meaning that I have to seek God's face about it, and that it had to do with women. Those were the very three things I was clear about. I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to be, So I'd registered. It took some time. I got the name. I prayed about it, got God's approval, registered it. Where it was very clear that you will register this business well, because it wasn't like it was a hobby. It was clear instructions that you will register it well. It will start with women. It would have to do with women, but by and large, it would become both men and women and children. I didn't get to how everything was going to come together and all. So when I registered it, I was kind of like positioning myself like a bank, but that wasn't where I was supposed to be going. And over time, I got some international opportunities, and it was very clear what I was supposed to be doing and how to structure the business and how to, run gender consulting the way it was. Apparently, the line he was taking me into was gender consulting, and I didn't understand because I didn't really have models. I didn't know who had done gender consulting before. As a matter of fact, I think from my research, there are only about three of us who are doing it now in Nigeria. I know there are other companies getting on the board. I mean, getting on board and trying to do it, and maybe running it in under their own offerings as well, but not fully positioned as gender consulting company. So yeah, I did a lot of trainings. I did a lot of learning. I am still learning. I'm a very, like I said, I have an insatiable level of curiosity. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm currently in about two fellowships, and also gotten another scholarship to learn something else. And I think as I continue to speak, you would know that I have actually really pretty exposed when it comes to my knowledge. So let me stop there for now, and I hope I've answered your question.
Yes. Thank you very much for your response. It's really huge. Sharing your career trajectory, how you put in a lot of work, and to the extent that you were even labeled as, oh, you were working as a man and all, or you didn't allow that to deter you, and you continued pushing and pushing through. So I think what's caught my attention from what you were saying. I wanted to ask, like, why you were in the banking sector, and the point where you notice a lot of challenges that women had to go through, in women banking and all. So did you start advocating for that? Did you maybe put forward a proposition to the management, and how did they take it? Just want to really know how that went, because sometimes one might have idea and you're bringing it to the senior manager, especially when it has been like a routine and it's very rigid. It's usually very difficult, especially in the banking sector. So we really want to know how you were able to navigate that path thing.
Fantastic question. So when I started to do women banking, I wasn't exactly sure what that looked like. For me, it was more about the number of accounts that would be open, as well as how women were able to also access funds. But the bigger picture was not just that women were accessing funds, right? It's also that they are using these funds well. It's also that they are paying it back. It's also, and I started to see more by the time we made alliance with one of the international organizations, Women's World Banking, and I think they really put things in perspective for me. Like, it goes beyond them just having accounts and all. It's really about them using those accounts well, such that their lives and the trajectory of their lives change. Because when a woman is well informed